How did I write Breath of Insight? Well, Breath of Insight, I had no intentions upon releasing this in all honesty. This was a college homework assignment that turned out to be right up my alley, exactly what I needed, and it couldn't come at a better time. All glory is due to God. So, I'm currently a college student. I decided to sharpen my skills and go back to school and elevate my writing, just take it up a notch. It wasn't necessary, but I like to challenge myself. So as opposed to, just continuously writing books, I wanted to learn what's the better way to sharpen my skills. How can I become a more active writer? What are some of the mistakes that I've made, etc. So as a college student, this all turned out as an assignment. This all started off as an assignment. So one of my college teachers, he said, this month we're going to be showing you how to release and write an ebook. So, due to the fact that we didn't have enough time to actually write a book, because we all know how time consuming a book can be, he decided to advise us, to pick out some of the stories, poems, just anything that we've been sitting on that we haven't released. And in terms of me, there were poems that I'm sitting on. I'm sitting on a manuscript, I'm sitting on flash fiction stories, and I've never released them. I've always wanted to. However, in the previous books, I just didn't see where they fit or, the real purpose behind it. Does this poem or does this story really pertain to the previous genres of the books that I've written? And they didn't. Even though I wanted to release them very badly, it just didn't fit into the picture. And it seemed as if it would just, steer the reader clear of the topic, be a distraction in a bit of a way. So that's why I didn't include them in the previous books. However, I took the three forms of poetry, the three poems, and the flash fiction story that I've been sitting on for the longest that I've never released. In terms of me as a writer, my favorite forms of poetry are soliloquy as well as free verse. Now, soliloquy is more like a monologue, in other words, a person talking to themselves, as a form of poetry that doesn't focus on rhyming. And these are not just typical conversations, like a typical conversation with yourself. No, it's an insightful conversation with yourself. And free verse, in terms of free verse, this doesn't focus on any writing scheme, any rhyming at all. It's more just, presenting your ideas with a powerful message behind it. That's also another, form of poetry that I love writing in. So I decided to take the poems, my soliloquy poems, as well as my free verse poems and one of my flash fiction stories that I know I wasn't going to include in any other books. And I've decided to combine all of them and place them into one book. So, in all honesty, if this was never a homework assignment, it would have never got released. And just to be honest with you, I would have just tried to find a way to place it into other books, but it would have never been released the way that it is. So, after gathering the things that I've been sitting on for a while, I've decided to release them, place them into a manuscript, organize everything correctly, and release it. Now, this is a bit different from what I've done in the past because oftentimes I would always include a book with scriptures and include a book that glorifies God. However, before releasing this, I did pray. I asked for God's advice, because this is not something that I normally do. It's not a negative book. It's not encouraging any, blasphemy or any actions of negativity, none of that. However, it still doesn't glorify God or include any prayers or scriptures like the previous books that I've written. However, I didn't receive, any blockages. God didn't advise me not to. So that's another thing that's a bit different about this book. It wasn't a way to disrespect God. It's not like, oh, I don't want to use scripture in my books anymore. No, that's not the case. It was just according to the requirements of, this assignment. The teacher was like, steer clear of any religious things. Don't include that in your book. And that's why I didn't include it. So and that's the only reason why you don't see any prayers, any scriptures, or things of that nature in the book. Because remember, this was all just a homework assignment. So that's the only reason why. In terms of my future books, they will definitely glorify God. They will definitely include scriptures, include prayers, and things of that nature. This wasn't a disrespect to God or anything of that nature. It was just, the just the requirements of the homework assignment. However, In terms of the book cover and the whole process, I released this independently. No one helped me do this. In terms of the only help that I did receive was just the editing, my teacher, that has been in the writing industry for more than 15 years. He edited the book, looked over it, proofread it, double checked it, and everything like that before I placed it, to be released, and before I took matters into my own hands and proceeded with it. In terms of the book cover, I designed the book cover, the formatting, everything else. I designed that, I dealt with that. And from that point on, I decided, okay, I'm going to release this. And that's the story behind, releasing Breath of Insight. It wasn't an insult for God, it's still an insightful and encouraging book. And I pray that it finds you well, you and everyone else who is reading it. But that's the story behind Breath of Insight.